Our meeting to order. Welcome everyone to Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee for this June 13th. I'll just read off that this is a public hearing matters under the Planning Act. This is a formal public meeting to consider applications under the Planning Act if a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered. The person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Municipal Board and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board. So before us we have item number 1, which is the draft plan of subdivision zone change application for Robert Ferry Drive and Carindale Drive for Chelan Estates. I'll bring this to staff first for a staff presentation. Julian, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to speak to the recommendations before the committee for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment and a proposed draft plan of subdivision for Chelan Estates in the Carindale community. This is an aerial view of the subject property, which is located to the east of Carindale Drive, north of the proposed Robert Ferry Drive extension, south of Stafford Lane, and west of the existing Dune South subdivisions. This is the plan of subdivision. In late 2012, a proposed plan and the accompanying zoning bylaw was submitted to the city. Applications were received at that time. In late 2013, the Robert Ferry Drive environmental assessment process was commenced in order to determine an appropriate alignment for the extension of Robert Ferry Drive from its current terminus at Evans Pond Court. And consequently, it was decided not to make a decision on the draft plan as the Robert Ferry Drive alignment had not yet been determined. The environmental assessment was completed and a new alignment was approved in June of 2014 and was subsequently this plan was subsequently revised to reflect the new alignment, was recirculated to agencies, departments, and the public for comment. In March of 2015, a neighbourhood information meeting was held, as well as a follow-up meeting with a small resident group, the ward councillor, and the applicants to discuss possible solutions to the concerns which were largely focused on the multiple block. There was a lot of good dialogue with the residents, and in the end, it resulted in some positive solutions to the issues. Here's the proposed plan for consideration, and I do have a coloured map to show you and explain it a little more. So, for your information, this plan shows a transition of lot sizes and housing, with the yellow area being the larger lot, single detached houses that are immediately adjacent to the plan to the north, which transitions nicely into the slightly smaller lot sizes in the orange, indicated in the orange. And then that transitions to the multiple blocks, which are kind of that lavender color, which would permit single semis and townhouses, as well as multiples. The blocks shown in the dark purple are park blocks. The lands in the light green are intended for open space areas, which include the trails through the hydro corridor, as well as the wetland. And the lands in the dark green are zoned P3, and this is where the stormwater management block is depicted, and this block will service both this plan as well as the already draft-approved plan to the south, the LVH plan. The Robert Ferry Drive alignment is shown to the west and to the south of this plan. You can see that dotted dash line. That is the new and approved Robert Ferry Drive alignment. Some highlights of the plan. There was a 10-meter wide landscape strip that is going to be provided along the hydro corridor, along the boundary between the multiple block, which is shown in Area 3, that purple, light lavender color, and the hydro corridor. This is to provide additional screening and buffering for the property at 191 Chapel Hill Drive. In addition, the plan provides a wide range of housing types, including larger lot singles, R4 singles, so standard single size, as well as the townhouse blocks. The plan has an overall lower density than both regional and city density requirements. And in this case, it was felt that this was more compatible with the existing development in the area surrounding the Carindale community. The plan also offers a reduction in the maximum number of units for the townhouse multiple block from 85 units to 66 units, which resulted from the meetings and the discussions that staff and the applicants, as well as the small resident community, had. The requirement for the provision of an urban design brief is an doctrine in the draft approval conditions, which will be used to help inform a site plan process which will deal with the multiple block. It will address things such as design, building siting and massing, landscaping, and architectural elements. And in addition, I can add that the maximum height for this block will be 3 stories. The buildings will be required to face towards Robert Ferry Drive to give that streetscape appearance and make it a much more attractive and more compatible look with the adjacent lands. The redesign to reflect the Robert Ferry Drive EA provided a safer intersection design for the intersection of Robert Ferry Drive and Carindale Drive. There is no access to Robert Ferry Drive from the multiple block because that would be too close to the intersection. In terms of addressing some of the safety concerns, the Chapel Hill Drive was narrowed at the trail crossing in order to slow traffic down. And in addition, the actual curvature of the road was designed to slow down traffic in this area. There will be a sidewalk on the south side of the Chapel Hill Drive within this plan of subdivision only. And in addition, the multi-use pathway will be going through the open space block on the north side of the Chapel Hill Drive. This will ensure, the reason for that is to ensure compatibility with the area, which will transition from a basically rural cross section with no sidewalks to the north, and the typical standard subdivision cross section with sidewalks on both sides of the street on the property to the south, which is already draft approved. We will have trails throughout the corridor, and the wetland feature, also shown as Area 5 on the east side of the plan in the light green, that is being protected from any development. And in conclusion, staff feel that there's been a satisfactory amount of technical review undertaken during this process, and there have been measures introduced through draft approval conditions that will speak to many of the concerns and or special conditions that we've added. We've engaged and listened to the public and the residents, and we resulted in a fair and balanced, positive approach when dealing through the issues that were addressed. This plan provides a variety of housing types. They are being offered at an overall lower density than what is seen throughout a typical subdivision within the City of Kitchener. It offers a transition of housing types with the larger single detached lot sizes to the north, and promotes compatibility with the existing residential areas. There's improved pedestrian and trail connectivity throughout the area, improved traffic flow and traffic calming with the narrowed road carriage at the trail crossing and the curvature of the road, conforms to the city's official plan, the regional official plan, as well as the provincial policy statements. And in short, it represents good planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will request that Dave Ashton from MHBC Group Planning, if you want to come forward and also make your delegation. Again, pursuant to council guidelines for meetings, delegations have 5 minutes to make the presentation, so please try to contain yourself within the 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I don't intend to take very long. I don't want to repeat anything that Ms. Von Westerholt has just covered off, just to add some additional information. With me this evening is Brian Bruce. He's a representative of Chelan Estates, the community that's proposing the plan of subdivision. First of all, I want to thank staff for their efforts in moving forward with the plan of subdivision. As mentioned by Ms. Von Westerholt, there was a bit of a stop and start as we made this submission, worked through the Robert Ferry Drive process, and then kind of came back around and had a neighborhood meeting and then a further focused resident meeting. And so that's been all very helpful in getting us to where we are this evening. I also want to thank Councillor Fernandez for being part of those neighborhood meetings and information sessions in facilitating those and coordinating with the residents. And she's been very interested throughout the process and involved with the focused neighborhood and resident meeting, and that was very helpful to assist in understanding and scoping the issues and coming to solutions where we could. So thank you for working with us. Again, the report that you have before you really is very thorough, works through the issues that we've heard through the process and responds to them. We've reviewed the conditions and worked with staff in preparing the conditions and in the zoning bylaw, and are supportive of the conditions and the approach that is before you this evening. As mentioned by Ms. von Westerholt, the plan itself, for the area that is there, the density is relatively low given the hydro corridor, the configuration of the parcel itself, the natural area in the stormwater management plan. And the intent all along was to transition the plan from the existing single detached homes in the community through the hydro corridor, and then have the density to the south of the hydro corridor transitioning into the newer development subdivisions in the area, the LVH plan, the Dune Creek plan to the east, and then future development that will be to the west of Carindale. So we see the mix of housing types appropriate for the area. In fact, the first submission of the plan and the zoning had proposed the R6 zoning, which would allow the smaller residential lots of minimum of 30 feet across the entire plan. And through discussions with the neighborhood and staff and Councillor Fernandez, we changed the zoning to require that those lots abutting the existing homes would have the R3 zone that's proposed. And that allows for a minimum of 45-foot lots. So the number of lots backing onto existing lots is 7 lots backing onto existing 4 lots, and those would be larger pie-shaped lots. So we feel there's a good compatibility between the uses. Ms. von Westerholt mentioned the density and the discussions that we had as it relates to allowing for a reduced density for this plan, considering community comments, that the hydro corridor, the natural features, and the joint approach to the stormwater management pond. The multiple block that's located to the south of the corridor is intended to provide for multiple residential, primarily townhouse dwellings. So that's why we had no issue in agreeing to a height limit of 10.5 meters and reducing the unit count. So we've worked through preliminary design, and that's about the range that we see townhouses in that area fitting on that block. Development of the land was contemplated as part of the Class EA, so that the proposed unit numbers were accounted for as part of the traffic considerations and the road design. And Ms. von Westerholt mentioned some of the details as it relates to the road design to address some of the more localized traffic concerns. So in conclusion, we're asking that you support the staff recommendation, and we are satisfied with the conditions in the zoning, and also concur with staff that the plan conforms to provincial policy, regional plan, and the city official plan. And happy to answer any questions.
That was timed really perfectly, right at 5 minutes, so thank you. I had a couple people key in for staff. Councilor Fernandez and Janetsky, do you want to ask questions of the delegation, or? Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So again, questions back to staff. Councilor Janetsky, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a few questions of clarification. Maybe you can help me out. If you could bring back on the screen that zoning map and that you had in color. Right on. Okay, the first question deals with Area 1, the cul-de-sac that backs onto some of the homes in Stafford Lane. You indicated that they would be the larger homes compatible with the existing development. And what is the zoning proposed on Area 1?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the zoning would be R3.
Are there special regulations to have a certain lot size and lot area, lot with frontage, to be compatible with those 1 acre size lots on Stafford, or are they meeting the zoning?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they would be meeting the zoning requirements of the R3 zone.
So help me understand, how many lots could be created on Area 1?
Would staff have that complexity of information? Or?
I do not at this point in time.
So-
Roughly.
Yeah, perhaps
If you
about
had
7
heard the
lots.
delegation from MHF, Dave Ashton, he had said 7. So
7?
Yeah.
All right, I must have missed that. In the report, you referred to the impacts on property at 191 Chapel Hill. Which one is 191? It doesn't identify it in the staff report. It just mentions 191, but I don't know which one it is on the map.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is the lot immediately adjacent to the north section of the open space corridor, Area 5. It is the first lot when proceeding northward into the existing subdivision on the, if you're looking at the plan, on the left-hand side. In behind it is the small purple triangle that represents the park. That is the lot in question.
Okay, now that's fine. I just want to know where that was. Thank you. Couple more questions. Area 3, where the multiple is proposed, you mentioned there'll be no access to Robert Ferry. So would this access be to the street too?
Access will be to Chapel Hill Drive. That's correct.
Okay. And the hydro corridor that runs right through the middle of the subdivision, there's proposed a trail link system that will be incorporated in there eventually?
That is correct.
Okay. And I'm just wondering how that would be incorporated when you got sort of a zigzag street pattern of Chapel Hill sort of crisscrossing through it. Will the street be incorporated anyway with the trail link, or are you going to have it all on the hydro corridor?
It is my understanding that the trail link will be immediately to the north of the street within the hydro corridor. So the multi-use pathway would be located within the green area, the light green area, but immediately adjacent to the road carriageway.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Is your question more in line that would there be for crossing built into the street form between along the hydro corridor with, as you said, Chapel Hill crisscrosses? So would there be kind of raised sidewalk or raised crossing for that connection? Would that be required as part of the development?
That would be dealt with during the detailed design of the road. It's certainly something that could be a consideration.
Good. I'm assuming that's where Councillor Janeski was forming his question. So, is that it? Good. Councillor Fernandez?
Thank you. Just I want to understand from the gallery, because I know that there's 2 issues here, of the number of people, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, who are here for this particular issue. If you could raise your hands for this subdivision. 7 and gentleman over here, right? Yes. Okay. I just wanted to have a sense because I want to make sure that if you do have outstanding questions after tonight, please make sure you contact me before council meeting on the 27th. Ms. Van Westerholt, when we were meeting with the residents group, one of the biggest concerns was around the multiple residential block, which is Area 3, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And one of the concerns that was expressed by a number of residents was the appearance of the townhomes facing I guess we're going to call it a little piece of Robert Ferry. But what we've decided is through the urban design that will not be the backs of the houses, but will actually be the fronts. But they will not be street fronting.
That is correct.
Okay. One of the other concerns that were raised by the residents is they didn't want to have any surprises, as they put it. So we had originally looked at 85. It says 66, but if I remember in our discussions with the developer and Mr. Ashton, we were looking at even possibly a lower number depending on the sale of the townhouses. And I apologize, I may be putting you on the spot because it's really more their, how they see their revenue being generated, because this is quite a unique situation, is it not?
It is, through you, Mr. Chair. This is a unique situation insofar as the lot configuration itself is going to be somewhat challenging to develop. The fact that we are adding a 10-meter fully landscaped buffer in order to offset some of the views for the resident at Chapel Hill is also going to take away some of that land. Keeping in mind that part of the site plan would also include that there has to be on-site parking provided, there has to be an amenity area provided. All of those things factored into the odd configuration of the site. The site will only yield so much. In addition, there are maximum floor space ratios. All of those things factored together would likely result in something lower than what the maximum is indicated here. An exact number, I do not have an exact number, but chances are that it'll likely be lower.
Okay, and thank you for that more detailed explanation, Ms. Van Westerholt. I think that's important for the residents who are here to hear that, because one of their ongoing concerns is they don't want to be surprised with a sudden wall of townhouses that are, perceived to be 3 stories high and or that they are 10.5 meters but look way higher because of the elevation. Just want to make sure. There was, just as I entered, there was a concern expressed about a sidewalk in front of the property behind Area 5. This may be something that we may need to discuss with the resident and clarify. But my understanding is that there is not going to be a sidewalk along the street to Chapel Hill as it proceeds to the existing Chapel Hill. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to clarify, there will be a sidewalk on one side of the street.
Correct.
And that would be the south and west side of the street as the street angles. And on the other side of the street, there will be a multi-use pathway, which is also a paved, treated pathway for access.
Okay, so we may have to have another conversation about that a little bit further in. The urban design brief is something unique to this development. Is that not correct?
For this particular site, we typically do have urban design briefs for submissions such as a multiple block, things that go through site plan approval. But this particular urban design brief requirement is going to be unique to this plan. That's right, it's very specific.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions, but I will have comments if there are no other questions after.
Of course, yeah, we have the opportunity. There are no other questions. Can I get a move?
Okay. I will move it as well. Sorry.
Good. It's been moved by Councillor Fernandez, so I will take comments. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. This was another very unique process, and I really appreciate the time that staff took to meet in further discussions with the residents. And I know that some of the residents expressed very strong concerns about the impact both to the existing area in Carindale and the area along Carindale Drive, where there are a little bit newer houses, but they were still tied to the 10,000 square foot. And I have an email here, 10,000 square foot rule. So I think we've come up with a fair bit of compromise, and I appreciate Dave Ashton as well as, and I'm only going to say Bruce because I keep forgetting your last name, I apologize, for also working together with the residents and with staff. And my hope is that, I've been known for not being very pro-development, and so I want to say that I think we've really struck some kind of a compromise that should respect the existing neighborhood and fulfill the needs for the Chelan community which is the desire that their young people should be able to continue to live within the area and go to the school that is adjacent to the church. And I think these are sort of important community factors in this development. I strongly urge any of the residents who are here tonight who still have concerns to please contact me or Ms. Van Westerholt, so that we can make sure that we put those concerns to rest before it is ratified at Council on June 27th. So thank you very much for everybody's work on this, and I hope we can continue doing the same kind of community work and community building that happened on this project.
Councillor Janetsky?
Yeah, I didn't realize we're jumping right into comments. I thought there's going to be delegations from residents, since Councillor Fernandez said there's a handful up in the audience, and we got 2 letters or 2 emails here addressed with expressing some concerns, so I thought we'd be hearing from residents. Is that
Well, Councillor Janetsky, the clerk has a sign out, and I think there was opportunity for people to sign up as delegations. I didn't have any notice. There's nothing before me. So I can only operate on the sheet that's before me. So.
All right, well, I can appreciate that. I just see these. I just thought maybe there were some delegations, but seeing none. But their issue seems to be the connection of Chapel Hill with the existing, so there may not be some concerns. One last question I forgot to ask before. In that property at 191 Chapel Hill, it looks like a portion of it is within the hydro corridor. Do they own that, or is that an easement? The way it confuses me, the way...
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is owned by the property owner at 191 Chapel Hill.
But the rest of the hydro corridor is owned by the hydro
Yes, no, it's owned
group,
by...
is that correct?
It's owned by Shalon. Yeah.
Oh, it's owned by Shalon. So the whole hydro corridor is an easement.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. But it doesn't concern me because the way it's been laid out, it satisfies the issues of planning. I'm prepared to support this application. I think it's good planning here prepared by staff. I've had a couple of residents inquire of me back a year ago on this, just out of curiosity and just asking for my opinion on it, and I've discussed the matters with them. Like I said, I'm prepared to support it. It looks like it's good planning. The issues of Robert Ferry Drive in terms of realignment have been resolved because that was a very important issue to address. And the layout of Shalon Estates, which is owned by, I guess, the owners of lands to the north, is part of their extension of their development. So it looks good to me. It's good planning and well done with the staff report resolving all the issues.
Thank you. There are no other comments. Just quickly want to say thanks, staff, for bringing us to this point, and of course the property proponent. I think this is an example of good planning and a completion of this continued completion of this neighborhood. And I think effort has been made to build that right type of compromise to the already built neighborhood as this neighborhood continues to grow and complete itself. So with that, I will call the question. All those favor? Opposed? That motion carries. So just for the residents that are here for this item, so this has been approved through the committee, and it will be ratified by council, which would be from 2 weeks from now. So thank you for attending. So we'll move on to item number 2, which is the official plan amendment, zone change application for Hidden Valley Residential Community Plan Amendment at 1054 and 1070 Hidden Valley Road. I'll request staff, when they are ready. Andrew, I'm guessing you have a presentation if you want to bring that forward. When you're ready.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Subject properties are located at 1054 and 1070 Hidden Valley Road and are located on the south leg of Hidden Valley, just east of River Valley Drive and Wabanaki Drive. The lands are 2.4 hectares or 6 acres in area and are composed of 2 abutting lots, both of which front onto Hidden Valley Road. The surrounding neighborhood is composed of single detached dwellings spread along Hidden Valley Road, single detached dwellings within the estate lot subdivisions to the east, known as Bridle Path Estates, and to the south, known as Hidden Valley Estates. There are also undeveloped residential lands on the north side of Hidden Valley Road, owned by Pearl Valley Development Corporation. They're subject to a draft plan of subdivision. The applicant has applied to change the official plan, zoning bylaw, and Hidden Valley Residential Community Plan to allow the development of 40 municipally serviced cluster townhouse dwellings on a private road. The current policies do not allow townhouses and limit development to 4 units per hectare. The applicant is proposing townhouses at a rate of 17 units per hectare. Planning staff is recommending refusal of the applications. Staff did reach out to the community. We requested comments and held a neighborhood information meeting in September of 2015 in which 90 to 100 people were in attendance. In general, the community expressed strong opposition to the applications. However, in this particular case, the community comments were not a significant factor in informing staff's recommendation. I should also mention that today we received 9 email comments just today in opposition, all in opposition to the application. And I have a package if council is interested, if committee is interested in receiving that, I can show those to you. I'd like to discuss planning staff's reasons for our refusal recommendation. Firstly, the subject proposal would permanently remove a significant portion of land zoned for estate lot residential from the city's estate lot residential inventory, thereby reducing the city's overall housing diversity. Estate lots are a finite resource under Ontario's planning framework. This doesn't just apply to Kitchener, but Ontario-wide, this is occurring. Secondly, the subject area is an ideal place to retain large lot development potential, since it is an isolated area due to numerous barriers, including, for instance, to the south and to the east, the Grand River. To the north, Hidden Valley Environmentally Sensitive Policy Area, Highway 8, the railway tracks, and Fairway Road, which is a major arterial road, as well as a truck route. And to the west, there are also barriers of heavy industrial lands, which contain, as an example, the Kitchener Operations Facility, as well as Wabanaki Drive, which is a major industrial traffic route. Thirdly, the area does not contain several key services and amenities that are necessary to support intensification, such as transit, schools, commercial lands, and parks. Fourthly, the Hidden Valley Residential Community Plan policies that were developed through extensive public input and engagement, which speak to permitted uses and maximum densities, are not policies that should be overlooked. And fifthly, urban design staff mentioned a concern about the interface between the townhouses that would front onto Hidden Valley Road, as well as the interface between the townhouses at the rear of the property and properties fronting onto River Birch Street to the south. For these reasons, staff cannot support the applications. It should be noted, however, that staff is very committed to intensification. In this case, planning staff's analysis shows that intensification is not appropriate and that lands should be retained for estate lot residential development. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Andrew. There are some questions. Councillor Gazzola and Janeski, do you want to ask those questions of staff? We have a presentation by GSP Group on behalf of the property owner, and then we have lots of other delegations as well. Do you want to hold your questions or ask questions of staff now? Sorry, 1 second. Go ahead.
No, the reason I keyed in is at the appropriate time, since it is in the ward that I represent, I would like to make the recommendation for it.
Of course, we'll come back to you. Okay. Councillor Janeski? Do you want to ask your question now or wait? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, simple question to staff. You indicated you got a petition or letters today, 9 of them, in support or opposition, I think you said, right?
in opposition to the application, yes.
Okay, and those property owners live where? In Hidden Valley community or elsewhere throughout the city?
To my knowledge, all 9 of them reside in the Hidden Valley community.
Okay, that's fine. And the final question I have is, at the beginning of this process of the subdivision, of the zone change and official plan amendment, I should say, a pre-application meeting is required between the applicant owners and yourself. When that initiated, was taking place, what was the submission and the intent of the developers at that time? Is it the same thing that we have before us?
Sure. Go ahead.
Ask, you said the letters are in support of the recommendation? At least the stuff that's been forwarded to us is in support of the application, not in support of the recommendation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we received 9 letters today that were against the proposal, in support of staff's recommendation, just to clarify. And we also did receive a petition this morning that had a number of names on it that was in support of the application itself.
But there were also several letters sent to council today in support of the application, not against.
Councillor Janeski was referencing to other letters that were in support of the staff recommendation,
Okay.
so it's more.
Okay, just wanted
part of
that clarified.
Sure, of course. And we'll come to and we'll recognize the petition that was received and the letters that were received earlier this morning that was in support of the applicant. Okay, anything else, Councillor?
Yeah, well, back to my question, it still hasn't been answered. I think you're conferring first.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We had 2 pre-submission consultation meetings. We had one that was many years ago. It was for draft plan of subdivision. That was off the table. And we've had one more recently through this particular applicant, through the present owner, and that was for basically the same proposal that you see before you today.
So you had discussions with them in terms of your, general comments, conformity to long-range plans, etc.
Yes.
And they still pursued by filing the application to go through the whole process.
That's correct.
Which leads us to where we are today.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we'll go on to our delegations. Brendan Flowelling with GSP Group. Brendan, again, you would have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is Brandon Flewelling. I'm from GSP Group. With me tonight is Mr. Bill Green from GSP Group as well, along with Mr. Paul Eichinger from MTE and Brian and Dan Sack, owners of the subject property. I'm here tonight to make a brief presentation. We've heard from staff, and I want to make sure that everybody on the committee, but also members of the public, are clearly aware of what the application is for and what is being requested in front of you this evening. Mr. Pinnell did a good job of explaining where the subject property is. It's within the Hidden Valley neighborhood. The property itself is the second property into the neighborhood, and it's relatively physically and removed from the surrounding neighborhood due to topographic elevations, the existing street pattern, wherein this is really the second property as you enter the southern reach of Hidden Valley Drive. The photo on the bottom of your screen there is seen from River Valley Drive, and you can see that the subject site is quite a bit higher. So what is in front of Planning Committee tonight, and what staff has seen and ultimately made their recommendation on, is a proposal for 40 executive townhomes. These are proposed as a condominium development, and the units themselves are marketed to what we'll call the step-down market, people looking to stay within the Hidden Valley community or perhaps enter the Hidden Valley community into a unit that is within a condominium, is it's still a very nice, very high-end unit, but doesn't have all the maintenance issues and so on that would be involved with owning a large Hidden Valley home. These are not starter townhomes. The proposal is for dwelling units that are in a range of 1,600 to 2,400 square feet. There will be a mix of 1 and 2 car garages. And the anticipated selling price to start is $600,000, likely $600,000 to $800,000 for a townhouse unit. These are not starter homes. These are aimed, again, at the step-down market and people looking to live within the Hidden Valley community in a form of housing that's not currently available there. The building materials that will be incorporated in the ultimate design would include a mix of stone and brick and wood, all elements that are found within the existing community. The site plan proposed is very similar to the one that we started with through the pre-consultation with staff, and includes large rear yard setbacks, and in fact shows a setback of at least 23 meters to the rear yard or the bottom edge of the page as you're looking at it, which creates a very large rear yard setback backing onto the existing Hidden Valley development. As said, there was a neighborhood meeting held back in September of 2015, and there was a number of items raised and concerns identified by members of the community, as is typical with any new development application. But one of the biggest concerns was, well, what about overlook? This site is at a much higher elevation than that of the surrounding community. Are these new units going to be staring into the backyards of the existing homes along River Birch Street? So what we've done is we've taken the ground level elevations, and we've looked at the elevation of the proposed dwellings, and we've said, okay, what does that look like when we put it into the computer model and generate it? What are these people actually going to see from the rear wall of the existing homes to the rear wall of the proposed development? Ultimately, shown on the page here is a wooden 6-foot fence, again, something that would be required through site plan approval. And this is what you would see if you're standing at 205 River Birch Street looking up at the proposed development. As you can see, you see a large roof line, maybe the top dormer window of one unit, and you're going to see, if you see any of the materials of the housing, it's going to look like any of the surrounding homes in the neighborhood. The distance between the rear yard of the proposed and the existing dwellings in this location is at least 165 feet based on the current site plan. There's quite a separation between the proposed. If we look at what it would look like with some mature landscaping, a landscaping plan would be part of a site plan application going forward. You can see that the units themselves would be further blocked through landscaping on the proposed townhouse development site. Moving one lot over, again, you see a roof line, some dormer windows, but you're not having people looking down into your backyard. There's a great deal of separation between these units. Amenity spaces are quite far apart from each other. And again, we see a proposed rear yard setback of 23 meters where the R1 zone itself only requires a 10-meter rear yard setback. This goes above and beyond what the existing zoning would permit. Again, another look, landscaping would be required, and landscaping in a mature state would just further buffer the views from one property to the next. So this is a rendering, of the proposed development itself. Again, we're looking at something with strong roof lines, articulated elevations, quality materials being brick and stone, mix of 1 and 2 car garage designs, maybe bungalow end units with a loft type or a loft arrangement, and 2-story units in the middle. All in keeping with materials and other elements found within the community. So again, these are not starting level units. These are going to be high-end quality units with materials that are found throughout the neighborhood. In order to permit the proposed development, there are a number of approvals required, including an official plan amendment, community plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment. As Mr. Pennell mentioned, we did have a pre-consultation meeting with staff, and yes, staff did say this is a different form of housing than what's currently in the community, but there certainly wasn't opposition identified from staff from the get-go. It's something that ultimately was found once the report was released. The official plan amendment requested looks to site-specifically permit townhouse units at a density of 17 units per hectare. The same amendment's required for the community plan because it follows the guidance of the official plan. And I'd like to note that in other areas of the city, the low-density residential designation would allow up to 25 units per hectare. The reason this is a different situation, is that the former Hidden Valley was subject to private services. That's not the case anymore. The municipal services are available. We're looking at a density that's still within keeping of the low density designation across the city. So we're not looking for something that's different than elsewhere in the city. The zoning bylaw amendment would request rezoning to an R6 zone, and that is specifically to permit a townhouse form of development. An increase of building height of 4 feet has been requested as well, again, to give greater architectural flexibility to make sure that these units are designed in a manner that has roof lines and elevations and pitches and so on that reflect the greater community.
And I want you to start wrapping up soon.
Yes. So the application seeks to permit a form of development that is different than that of the rest of Hidden Valley, but it's certainly a form that is compatible. There's been a lot of thought put into what these units will look like and the market that they will serve. The application conforms to provincial levels of policy all the way down to city levels of policy. And it's our submission that we respectfully disagree with the staff position in protecting the city's largest single detached lots versus something as proposed here that's a very compatible form of development on a standalone site that's not going to have any negative impact to the surrounding community. Again, it's the second lot in the community. Traffic's not going to flow beyond this and throughout the Hidden Valley neighborhood. People would come home and leave the neighborhood again. The traffic's not going to be a concern from this. The previous application, as Mr. Pinnell identified, was for draft plan of subdivision for single detached lots with an R2 zone. The maximum number of lots that could be accommodated in that situation is 8. So we're looking at an opportunity here to provide 40 units, or if we stuck with the R2 zoning, which staff said they could likely support, you could see 8 units. There's many other examples throughout the city of executive townhomes within neighborhoods adjacent to single detached homes. This certainly isn't something new. Again, there's examples from Dune South, from Deer Ridge on the top right of your screen. There's examples from Chicopee and from Westmount as well. There's certainly a need and a desire to have a range of housing types within all communities of the city, and Hidden Valley should be no different.
Again, Brandon, please, if you can start wrapping up.
Yeah, I'm on my last slide.
Okay.
So as noted earlier, there was a number of letters of support for the application submitted this morning, along with a petition with over 115 signatures of residents within Hidden Valley, but also from the larger area who've said, you know, this is a type of development that they would either like to move to or they support this type of development. And we kindly request that that committee support the application as before you, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. There are questions by the committee. Councillor Janetsky, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. In the drawing that you had, the site plan of the units that you had laid out there for your development, that one there, what's the setback for units 14 to 17 from the property line in distance, approximately?
So that setback is, through you, Mr. Chair, approximately 23 meters. The R1 zone itself would only require a 10-meter setback, but because of the grades of the site and making the site work and avoiding overlook issues, there's a setback proposed of 23 meters in that area.
Okay. And then a setback from lot 38, or building 38, I should say?
That setback would be in the neighborhood of 7.5 meters, but that's backing onto an open space area of land owned by the city along River Valley Drive.
Right, okay. When you started meeting with staff initially to file the application, how many units were you suggesting or proposing at that time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the first site plan concept we had 42 units.
42?
42. Upon further revision and the developer looking at the units that they ultimately would like to build, they went with a larger units and that scaled it down to 42. If I may, the application before you is not seeking any special relief in terms of setbacks from side yards or rear yards to accommodate this. So it's not as though more units are being shoehorned into the site through extra relief sought from those types of setbacks.
So these
Based on an R6, under the R6.
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
thank you.
So these rear yards comply with the zoning?
That is correct.
Right, okay. When your client bought the property, what were the lands zoned?
The lands are zoned R1, and that was the zoning that was in place.
Okay, so right from day one, you knew there was R1, and you knew you wanted to increase it to provide this type of development, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Last question I have, in terms of one of the site plans that you showed, in terms of the looking from the rear yard of the properties on River Birch, I think 205, I think you mentioned, that view there, or one of the views, and you have fencing there, but you have no parking in the back for, usually when fencing is put up because of town housing, it's usually because there's parking behind, you want to screen it from the existing residences because they don't want to look at cars and stuff of that nature. In this particular case, you have a fence, 6-foot-high wooden fence, and you see the roof lines. Yet, when I looked at the drawings that you showed of the building design, show the frontage of the development that you have. That one there, yeah. When I look at that, that looks like a beautiful building. Beautiful stonework, nice architectural designs, different features in terms of roof lines, etc. And I'd love to look at that as opposed to just looking at a fence and the roof. So I'm just wondering why you would want to pursue having a fence if the residents may want to enjoy the beauty of the development of nice stonework.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The rendering with the fence was typically fencing, as you noted, is required around the perimeter of a townhouse development, whether it's to block off parking or if it's simply to define the limits of the property. Again, the rendering was only for prospective purposes and would be subject to site plan approval in the future. So if working with staff, it was decided that wrought iron or no fence or hedging and trees were desired instead, that's certainly something that would be considered.
Okay, and that's just sort of my opinion, seeing the way it is, and I'm waiting to hear what the residents have to say in terms of their comments on this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is just a general comment to the committee members. Just, again, I'm guilty of this as well. Sometimes you miss information, but we want to make sure that we try to pay attention to the delegation and the information being given. We don't want to be repeating the questions that was just provided to us through the delegation. And just in the last question, Councillor Janetsky, the delegation had said that the fence was a mitigation measure to, again, some concerns of the adjoining property owners that the future development, the property owners might be overlooking onto their property. I don't want to speak on behalf of the delegation, that's their job, but again, we want to make sure that we, for the efficiency of the meeting, we try to take note of the information being given to us. So please, Councillor Fernandez.
Well, since I missed part of the delegation, you'll have to give me a little bit of latitude then, because I may...
No, as I said, I do it myself too, but we just want to make sure that we try to be effective as possible.
Okay. So just in looking at the report, so I'm going to be asking some questions that you may or may not have already addressed. It says on page 2-6, ideal location to retain estate residential lot potential. I'm kind of puzzled as how you can say that when you're putting quite dense infill development here. There's no amenities in this area that are walkable. You're creating a car-dependent townhouse development, which for the most part we try to find in areas where there are walkable amenities. So I'm a little bit puzzled to see how you see this fits into this area.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what is proposed is an alternative form of housing within the Hidden Valley neighborhood. Whether singles were proposed here or townhomes or no change, the community amenities are what they are. This is simply looking at providing an alternative form of housing within the community. There will be private amenity, yard space, and so on as part of the townhome development. But if singles were proposed or whatever the proposal is on this property, that doesn't change what community amenities are available. And that's something that residents who've moved into Hidden Valley or those looking to move there would have to consider.
You're right, they would have to consider that, but you're increasing the density substantially. When you're living on a half-acre or three-quarter acre, 1 acre lot, you're fully aware that you're going to be at a distance for even just going to your neighbors. When you're building something of this density, people are going to expect that it won't be long in the future where they will be able to walk to a school or a church or a community center or even to a shopping area. So you've answered my question, but the other question I have is related more to the environment. And there was a conversation, community comments about the loss of wildlife habitat. So I've been involved for a long time with regards to the preservation of Hidden Valley. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to drive out to this area, so I'd like to see it. Yeah, that would be great. Well, go forward one more.
That way?
Okay. I wanted to have an understanding of what the slope of the land is of this development towards the Hidden Valley area. Are you sitting higher than the valley and on the opposite side of the road? Is that my understanding here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. This site sits higher than the surrounding streets to the west and to the south. And also, just beyond this site, it slopes down into Hidden Valley as well. So this site is probably one of the higher points, and certainly on this reach of Hidden Valley.
Okay. What is the impact, or what do you expect that the impact, or how will you mitigate the impact of water running off this site? Because you're going to be looking at a greater impervious cover, and water quality and quantity flowing into the ground and down towards the river where we take our drinking water will have some effect, I'm sure.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've had a preliminary look at stormwater management and grading and those types of activities. And, whether it's through the use of infiltration trenches or so on, or what the ultimate design is, we've looked at it on a higher level, but that's certainly something that is flushed out through the site plan approval process. But we are certainly confident that it can be accommodated. We've done enough work to be confident of that.
And just from this picture and the one that was after this or before this, your elevation is significantly higher than the existing houses. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. So the picture in the bottom right side of the screen is from River Valley Drive, and that's looking up at a large berm that's located, if you look at the picture on the left, located on the west-hand side, or the western side, or the left-hand side of the subject property as seen. So the large berm itself will be retained, and the site will be developed around it.
Okay. And you've got an existing property on this picture. Is that to be demolished? Within that red zone?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the existing home would be demolished to support this proposed development.
Okay. Well, I would like to hear. We have delegations from the residents?
We have lots of delegations, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Brnovich.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. Obviously, you're aware that there's significant concern in the neighborhood, in the existing neighborhood around this particular proposal. Have you considered as part of the process, or in terms of going forward, any options that would, perhaps see the development of some townhomes and so on, but at a lower density than what's being proposed here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've looked at it. Comments we've received from staff ultimately point towards support for single detached homes in an R2 zoning, similar to a previous application that was here a number of years ago on the subject property. So with that in mind, it's difficult to go forward and say, we know there's concern about the townhouse development, but it's difficult to go forward and say, well, 30 is supported and 40 is not. We don't know what that number is. At this point in time, staff has said that they're not supportive of of a townhouse development. So scaling it back, there would have to be further discussions and some parameters around that in terms of where are the impact areas and where would it need to be scaled back to come to that compromise. And we haven't had that type of direction provided.
Okay, and I can appreciate that. I mean, you know, as I look at this, I do look at the uniqueness of this overall neighborhood and the fact that it is large estate lots and it is one of the few places in the city left where those can exist. But I also do understand some of the other feedback we've heard from some residents around the desire to stay in the neighborhood and downsize in some higher end units. One of the problems that we often have with these kinds of proposals, though, is, you know, we can approve something like that, but in the end, there's no guarantee that, you know, your client will not sell the properties and somebody else come in and redevelop them in a different way. And so, you know, what mechanisms, if any, or possibilities are there to assure the community that, in fact, you know, what you're showing and what you're speaking of would be guaranteed?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's certainly an issue that comes up quite often. What I can say is that it's noted in the staff report, and going forward, any proposed development on this property for townhouse units would be subject to site plan approval. And as part of that, we had to submit an urban design brief, of which we actually submitted 3 reiterations of it in working with the city's urban design staff. So that urban design brief provides a number of points or direction of, you know, what the unit should look like, the type of materials, setbacks, units facing Hidden Valley Drive. So there's some control through that mechanism to ensure that any site plan that's ultimately approved meets the intent of the urban design brief that was submitted in support of the application as before you today.
But that would really be the extent of...
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, it's difficult through zoning, for example, to say that you can't say you have to build units that are, you know, at X number of price point. But that is certainly a strong control mechanism, and city staff certainly wouldn't support something that was radically different from what's proposed based on the direction from the urban design brief.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gzzola.
Yeah, I just want to zero in on your thoughts about the neighborhood. At that public meeting, what would you say was the general feeling of the people in attendance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's safe to say at the meeting itself there were a number of residents who spoke out in opposition to the proposed development. Part of it was some misinformation. It was an error on my fault just in saying how big the units were. I didn't properly articulate what size of units are proposed, and that was part of the reason for the presentation this evening. So there was certainly concern over the proposed development, but I've also heard through dialogue and other comments provided that a lot of that information perhaps wasn't based on the actuality of what's been presented here tonight. The thought that was that they were a lower end type of unit, maybe not the same materials, and those type of details, smaller sizes and that type of thing. So whether the comments here tonight change any of the opinions of members of the neighborhood who spoke in opposition that evening, I don't know, but those were my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Did you get a sense as to where those people that attended that meeting came from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did look at where the addresses of people who spoke and registered at that meeting were in relation to the subject property, and there were a number throughout the neighborhood. There were certainly more that were further away from the proposed development than I would have anticipated. There were members of the community backing onto or along River Birch Street who did speak in opposition, but there were a number that were further into the community who also spoke to it.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that I did get a copy of the petition, and I did count it. There was about 130 names on the petition, and the petition really did provide good coverage because the bulk of the names come from right across southern Ontario. the bulk of the names were not people that live in the neighborhood. And so I really question the value of that petition. We also received, along with that petition, a number of letters, but although they were signed, there was no indication as to where those people came from. So do you have any response to that? Or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Sack, I believe, is registered as a delegation to speak a little later this evening. He's probably more the best one to speak directly to the petition and the letters that have been received. But certainly they're not. It's not intended to appear as though they're all from within the Hidden Valley community. It's a cross-reference of people from all over the place.
Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis?
Thank you, Chair Singh. Thanks, Mr. Fluing, for coming in and your presentation. I guess one of the questions, and I will ask the owner and when it's regards to the petition, but one of the questions I wanted to ask is, what are the, I guess one of the questions was raised from one of the members of committee about stormwater and how is your clients dealing with that on this particular site?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The stormwater design is contemplated that it would be collected on site and then outlet through an easement at the southeast corner of the site and into the ultimately connect into the existing storm sewer system and the existing storm pond within the Hidden Valley community. Controls would need to be in place on site to ensure that the flows leaving the site are appropriate and something that's supported through the city's engineering department. But conceptually, it's certainly been looked at and demonstrated that it can be accommodated in a manner that is typically used across the city on any new developments.
Okay. I guess one of the other questions is the urgency of this application. Is there an immediate emergency to have this approved today or for the following?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as you know, all developers are anxious to move forward, but there's no emergency to have it approved this evening. If that's a reference to further discussions with staff or the neighborhood or whatnot, then that's it's certainly something that can be considered. It's
okay.
Something to consider.
And I guess my last question is regards to, and I know Mayor Verbanovic touched upon it, but I know in myself, if there's maybe some additional greater setbacks or anything like that that could be implemented or reduced density, I mean, that I think would be favorable if further discussions were had.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd certainly be open to further discussions with staff to look at those types of things if it would lead towards a favorable staff position.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I do have some concerns with this because of the timing of that petition that came earlier this morning. I'm wondering if deferral at the appropriate time so we can, get a better understanding of what that petition is and hearing the rest of the delegations when the time's appropriate.
So are you moving a deferral?
Yes.
For what time? Like what date? Do you have a date in mind, or?
Well, as the delegation, I will, when the time's appropriate, I'll come up with the time. But as the delegation had mentioned, it's no emergency.
Okay. Okay. So if you want to consider that while we continue on, I'll just quickly ask some questions, Brendan, and I have some of the similar kind of inquiries. So just to elaborate a little bit, you did say that the current setbacks meet the guidelines, but that's the guidelines of the requested zone change of an R6. Keeping in mind that the neighborhood has much lower zoning density and, of course, requiring much more significant setbacks. Was there consideration by the property owner, in keeping with what the staff recommendation is, knowing that the staff are not supportive of it, in working and redesigning for lesser number of townhome units? Because I understand the argument that you put forward to bring forward a diversity of a housing type in that neighborhood, but lower number of units, so allowing for bigger setbacks. Was that something that was considered already, or you haven't come to that yet?
If I may, the setbacks proposed around the periphery of the property, it's really only on the left-hand side at unit 38 where we're obtaining the minimum zoning setback requirements. Along the east side, for example, we're proposing 10 meters. Along the south, it's 23 meters. So the large setbacks are proposed. We've kept the units closer to Hidden Valley Drive, but that was, in support of urban design staff. In terms of reducing the overall density, it would certainly be something to be considered, but the last comments we received that we had through staff was that, we did meet with Mr. Pinnell and other members of the planning staff, and ultimately the comment was they would support a rezoning to perhaps an R2 zone.
Sure.
That would allow single detached residential. So it's quite a chasm between 8 single detached lots and 40 townhomes. So to know what the difference is, it could be considered, but we'd need some direction.
Sure, and I'm not trying to get into that debate as to what is that right mix, but if I'm looking at this, if the inside row, one of those rows, if it were to be taken out, I would see much more longer setbacks on the outer edge properties that would be more indicative of other properties that are in the area. That's how I see it anyways. But and you've answered the question for stormwater mitigation, that there is a stormwater pond near and the runoff water could be flowed to it. Are there additional measures that could be in place? Because again, this is an environmentally sensitive neighborhood, even though stormwater management controls are there. But again, because more impervious ground, I think additional measures might coincide with more satisfaction by the neighborhood and planning principle here too. Is it capacity with the developer to do something like that?
Certainly, those types of options can be looked at. At the first blush, at seeing if this thing can actually function as laid out. It's been identified that it could in a manner that's done elsewhere throughout the city. But if there's something else that needed to be done, that can be worked out through the detailed design stage with city engineering staff. And again, we just haven't had that level of direction provided to say that you need to provide extra pre-treatment of stormwater or whatever the case might be. So those types of things are possible, but we just haven't had that direction to have those conversations and to review it.
And that's fine. I appreciate that. But sometimes I realize our staff were not supportive of this, so there's limited conversation in that regard. But again, it's always helpful when the developer is proactive and starts to investigate different measures that would only make it easier for committee and council and the neighborhood to start seeing, yes, there's a cooperative relationship here. So sometimes you can't just wait to be told. You can investigate as well. But anyways, appreciate as a delegation coming forward. On behalf of the property owner, we'll go on to the next person. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all the questions.
Thank you.
Can I have Carol Wiebe with MHBC Planning come forward, please? And again, Carol, you have 5 minutes. And if you can please define who you're here on behalf of.
Yes, I will. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is Carol Wiebe. I'm a partner and principal planner with MHBC Planning. I'm here this evening on behalf of Hidden Valley Estates and Mr. Peter Cruz with respect to this application. I'd like to, a lot of new councillors around the ring, but MHBC was involved with the planning of a number of the development in this neighborhood going back to early 2000, and Councillor Gazzola was present at one of the very early neighborhood meetings that we had in the planning of the Hidden Valley Estates. And during that initial consultation with the residents, and most notably with the residents in Bridle Path Estates, one of the most frequent comments that we heard was that Hidden Valley represented a very unique neighborhood within the city, and that every effort should be made to preserve the rural ambiance and the character. And this rural character is enhanced by the predominance of the natural features, the rolling topography, and the overall lack of urban amenities. It really is a hidden valley in the city. In fact, that is what defines Hidden Valley from most other neighborhoods. Many of the residents who chose to live here did so because of its beautiful scenic landscapes and its very distinct rural character. And I would imagine that most of you, if you haven't been through there, it is. You come down over that hill, you got to get through the industrial, but once you get down over that hill, you wouldn't know that you're in the middle of a large urban center. And historically, it was because of the lack of municipal services that initial subdivision, Bridle Path Estates, was developed on large estate lots because of private water and sewer services. The Hidden Valley subdivision, which is immediately to the south of this property, the subject lands, was developed on full municipal services. But it was very important for the existing neighborhood that subdivision, which was built in early 2003, 2004, and there's still a few vacant lots, it was very important to those residents that proposed subdivision incorporate the same policy framework, the same character as the overall Hidden Valley neighborhood. And it was for twofold. It was to maximize the preservation of that scenic beauty, to allow separation between residents, to allow the landscape to be the predominant defining character of those neighborhoods. And the Hidden Valley Residential Community Plan, it was initially formulated back in 1987, and it was recently updated as recently as 2005. The majority of those policies within the community plan have remained virtually unchanged. And those policies have been incorporated both into the city's existing 1994 official plan and more recently the 2014 official plan. So those very specific policies that define Hidden Valley have been adopted as special policy areas both in the 1994 and the 2014 official plan. So they recognize that this is a very unique part of the city. In fact, the 1994 official plan identifies these lands as being within special policy number 3, Hidden Valley. And the maximum net residential density is to be no greater than 4 units per hectare. The Hidden Valley Estate subdivision, which I just mentioned, which is on full services, is just under 4 units per hectare. The 2014 official plan, which is the most recent direction from Council, also carried forward that special provision and also says that the maximum density shall be 4 units per hectare. The planning justification report that was prepared on behalf of the applicant includes a fair bit of discussion on policies that are applicable to low-rise residential, both within the 1994 and the 2014. In fact, the delegation made reference to those low-rise residential policies allowing densities of 25 to 30 units per hectare. Those aren't applicable here. What is applicable and what is relevant are the special policy areas that say the maximum of 4 units per hectare. And in fact, the 2014 official plan even says, notwithstanding that there are full services available, that density is to remain at 4 units per hectare. It doesn't say that you can go higher. It says maintain that rural character and the ambience that is distinct to Hidden Valley. So I would urge the council to respect the official plans that are in place that have been recently adopted and approved. I understand that the official plan is under appeal right now, but that is the most recent direction that council gave on how they want to see the development of this Hidden Valley. It is very unique. And in terms of the city's ability to meet their intensification and their growth projections in conformity with provincial policy, there are many, many opportunities throughout the city where the city can meet those objectives. You don't need to increase the density to 17 units per hectare on this property for the city to fill those obligations. It's more important, and it's reflected in your most recent official plan, that you respect that unique rural character, which is what Hidden Valley is known for, and what many of the residents chose to live here for, is that they wanted to be in that unique area.
Carol.
So in conclusion,
Go ahead.
we support the recommendations that staff have presented to you. We think that this is a poorly thought out plan. It is, in fact, totally contrary to the policies within your in-force and your proposed official plan. And it's our submission that the application should not be approved.
Thank you. So there are some questions for you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, through you, Chair Singh. Thanks, Ms. Wiebe, for coming in. Can you just explain to me who you're representing it again and what's the relationship to this? Because
Okay, I am representing Hidden Valley Estates, which is the development company that developed the surrounding subdivision, and we were involved in that going back to the early 2000s and 2003, 2004. And Mr. Cruz, Peter Cruz, is the developer. He also lives in Hidden Valley, so I'm representing both the company and Mr. Cruz personally.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Wiebe, for coming in and talking about the development that you represent. When I look at the map on 2-29, I see that there is Street C, Street B, and Street A. Does your client have any development interest in those properties?
Could you repeat your question now that I have the plan?
Yeah. So on page 2-29,
Yes.
there's immediately across from this subject area, the Street C, Street B, and Street A. Does your client have any development interests on those properties?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no. No, they don't.
Okay. Would you be able to, you were involved in the whole process from start to finish with the development of the Hidden Valley Estates, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Would you be able to tell us what impacts that development may have had on the uniqueness of Hidden Valley? Because you're talking about the rolling topography and you're talking about the rural setting. And let me ask you the question first. How many additional units were built in that area?
Sorry.
How many additional houses were built on River Valley Drive, River
How
Valley?
many additional as
How many
opposed to-
units were built in that area?
Oh, total?
Yeah.
How many units, how many lots there are currently?
If I could direct a question through you, Mr. Chair, are you asking how many lots were proposed in the Hidden Valley subdivision?
Right. Sorry, it was the way I phrased it very convoluted. I'm sorry about that.
I happen to have the old 2003 report here. I can tell you that the density was 3.86 units per hectare. Just bear with me one moment.
I mean, was it 50 lots? Was it 75 lots?
Again, speaking to the density is
There
3.8
were
per
50,
hectare.
through you, Mr. Chair, there were 53 lots. The minimum lot frontage was 24 meters, and the largest lot frontage was 66 meters.
Okay. So do you not think that the uniqueness of Hidden Valley was affected by that development?
That's not the question at hand, Councillor.
I know, but
Fernandez.
my
again,
next question is going
but then
to speak
please
to that.
focus on
I still
that
have
question.
1.29 left.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the proposed development through Hidden Valley was in conformity with the official plan policies, and it was reflective of the community plan, which was developed by the residents within Hidden Valley. It did contemplate lots of that size and at that density. So it was below the 4 units per hectare.
Okay, and I can appreciate that. So my last question really is what your client is asking, and I suspect you're vocalizing what the community at large that lives there is saying, is we don't want to change what we have now and further degrade the uniqueness and the sensitivity of Hidden Valley.
I can only, through you, Mr. Chair, I can only speak for the concerns that have been enunciated to me from my client. And one of the advantages of creating lots that are large is that you don't have to undertake extensive cut, fill, and grading. You can actually work with the natural topography. The concern with the proposed development with 40 townhouse dwellings, cluster dwellings, sitting on the top of the hill is that there is going to have to be some alteration of grade. And while I understand what the applicant is saying, that lot is separated from the subdivisions themselves, it is in the most prominent location. It will be visible from virtually all of the home sites. So it really is not indicative of what you would expect in a rural neighborhood. And as we heard from the previous application earlier this evening in the Cairndale, was that there was great effort made to transition, that the townhouses were separated through a significant hydro, and that they actually came in at a much lower density, and that is within a much more urban part of the city. And yet great attention was made to transition appropriately.
And I'm really glad you identified some of the concerns that I have. And so it was great that you articulated those as well. Thank you.
Councillor Janeski, 5 minutes.
Thank you for coming in, Ms. Wiebe. And you indicated you've been involved with this for quite a while. And your client, Hidden Valley Estates, did they develop the entire Hidden Valley with all the subdivisions, or were there other developers?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Hidden Valley Estates developed what is referred to as the Hidden Valley Estates subdivision, which is immediately to the south of the subject lands. The subdivision to the east, which has even larger lots, that is referred to as Bridle Path Estates.
Oh, yeah.
And that was originally developed without any municipal services. It's my understanding that I think those lots are still on private services. Hidden Valley Estates is on full municipal services.
Okay. Does your client have any land still left for development?
Yes, there are still some few remnant parcels within their land holdings.
Would they be sort of large lot developments, sort of comparable to what's proposed? Not proposed, but what's in the existing area?
Mr. Chair, there are some large blocks of undeveloped land. I think there's still 3 lots that have not yet been developed. I believe that they're sold, but they haven't been developed yet.
Okay, thank you.
I request that we try to contain our questions to the subject matter, which is the application, as to what the lots are available right now. I'm not sure how that connects, but if you do ask that question, please just give some explanation which direction you're giving, so that it would make it easier for us to follow. That's all. Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, thank you for coming in, and thank you also for reminding us of what our official plan that has been approved, and this very council here did approve the 2014 version of it. I just want to ask you a quick question, and you may not be familiar, but did you have any familiarity with the proposal that came forward a few years ago for 8 units there that was, it didn't go very far, but did you have anything to do with that, or were you familiar with it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I was not involved in that development.
Because that would have been one that would fit the, yeah. Thank you, that's all.
Sorry. Mayor Vanvik?
Thank you, and thanks for coming in, Ms. Wiebe. I guess my question will be sort of the opposite of what I asked the previous delegation. And as you know, there's a number of parcels of land that are in that area that presumably will experience some sort of development in the future. So there will be change in the neighborhood. From the perspective of your client, do you see anything that would potentially meet the desires of a group of residents that might want to downsize because they've lived in the neighborhood in either your client's area or the adjoining one, and as they get older might want to downsize to something smaller but stay in the area? Is there sort of any scenario that you think would achieve that objective for your client?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's important to understand that the Hidden Valley area has a very unique set of policies, and it has those policies for a very specific reason. There is a very noted lack of urban amenities in the Hidden Valley area, and in fact, if you go back and look at the community plan, part of the reason that the densities are capped at 4 units per hectare is because the city did not want to have pressure to provide additional urban services such as fire and police and parks and schools, and all of those pressures that would build if densities were increased. So there's been a very concerted effort by this council and previous councils to maintain that rural character. And along with that is the understanding that there are going to be certain amenities that will not be available. So again, does that necessarily coincide with people that are looking to downsize, to look to, because as you retire or downsize, sometimes your need for some of those services increases. So there may be a bit of a conflict between those people that want to live there and the policy intent for how this area is to develop.
Well, and that may be a factor that we're going to have to grapple with as we consider other properties in the area in the future. But I guess you answered my question partially.
Yes.
But I guess I'm looking for a specific answer. Is there any sort of development that you see would be congruent with people's desire to downsize and stay in the neighborhood?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think development that meets the intent of the official plan, the 4 units per hectare, and in a bungalow format, could go partway to achieving some of those goals.
Okay, thank you.
And those are the questions of the committee, but I have a couple questions of myself. In line with the last questions by Mayor Vivanovic, so again, the existing some parcels that are larger size will allow continual development to take place, maybe not to the density that is being asked right now. So right now, again, the proponent has alluded that there may be some support for an R2 allowing for 8 units. Is that something your client may be more supportive towards? Which may not be in line with the official plan for 4 units per hectare, but again, it's a lot less than what's being currently asked.
I have, through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't had an opportunity to discuss with my client what they would be prepared to accept. I know that the density that's proposed with this application is more than 4 times what the official plan contemplates, and that's clearly not what they're in support of.
Okay, so you were initially involved with the Hidden Valley Estates, that development, and then there was some additional development with Bridle Path as well?
The Bridle Path Estates was developed actually before
predated.
Hidden Valley,
Okay.
yes, and it was the subdivision to the east that was developed on private services. So
Right.
those lots are quite large.
Okay. So they obviously would meet the 4 lots per hectare, but the development on Hidden Valley is less than the 4 lots per hectare, though, is it not?
The Hidden Valley Estate subdivision, which really wraps around this subject property, was developed at just under 4 units per hectare. So even though it was on full services, they were able to meet that threshold of 4 units per hectare.
Right. And you're before us, to share some of your in-depth planning understanding, a lot of times we hear the need for a variety of diversity in housing types, and that's somewhat lacking in this neighborhood. To meet some aspect of that intent, do you think effort should be made, or?
I did mention that in my closing statements. Both provincial policy and the regional plan, and even the city's own official plan, speak to providing a range and mix of housing. It doesn't say that mix and range of housing has to be provided in every single part of the city. And I would say further that because the policies that relate to the Hidden Valley area are quite different, and say, notwithstanding that services are available, the maximum density shall remain at 4 units per hectare. So there was a very conscious and deliberate intent to carry forward those original community plan policies in both the 1994 official plan and even the most recent 2014 official plan. There are many, many opportunities throughout the city where the city can meet their intensification targets. They can provide a full range and mix of housing.
So when you said there are many other areas, are you talking about our inner core?
Every subdivision, suburban subdivision, can provide that range and mix of housing. Provincial policy doesn't say that you have to provide that range and mix in every single neighborhood.
Okay, all right. I think that's the question that this council has to grapple to see if that true holds for this neighborhood. Thank you. That's all the questions by the committee. Next is Dan Shack. Dan Sack. Dan Sack. Sack. Hi, Dan.
Hope I don't pull this up. I'm not sure how to address everybody other than Mr. Mayor and Council. I'd like to start out by saying I've been a resident of Hidden Valley. I live on Hidden Valley Road. I've been there for 22 years. And the way this all started was I drove past this piece of particular property pretty well 2-3 times a day for the whole 22 years I lived there. My house right now is about 8,000 square feet, and I'm the only person that lives in it. To go from one room to another, I have to go up or down, minimum 2 steps. So I said to my brother one day that the house is just way too much for me. Should have something smaller. So we seen this piece of property and thought, perfect, why don't we do this? This is probably something that could help everybody to live in something smaller, yet still live in the same area. I talked my brother into possibly moving into the same area with us, that we might be 2 of the first people that would actually move into these things if we were allowed to build them. Going forward, I think all of us residents out in Hidden Valley have retained some kind of shell shock, because it seems that a year hasn't gone by that we've gotten a letter from regional stating that they want to do something, whether it's save the salamanders, put the road right through the middle of the swamp or pond that's in the middle of Hidden Valley. But in either case, I think an opposition group has been formed years ago, which I know I've gone to a few meetings myself. So it wasn't hard to rally the troops for another opposition meeting. At the meeting that we did have out at the Kitchener Yards there, 38 homes attended the meeting. From the numbers that I got, the feedback from the city, counted them, I marked them out. I counted the homes. There's 135 homes in Hidden Valley, 38 of which attended the meeting. 13 voiced their concerns. I believe that nobody that was planning on being approval of this attended that meeting, short of myself and my brother, which we thought we were lucky to get out of there with our lives. The person that we bought the property from, shortly after hearing somebody comment on what we're going to do about all the wildlife, She got a call because her her dog was attacked by a coyote right there during the meeting. She left the meeting to go home and had to have her dog put down because of this coyote attack. So it seems kind of ironic how we're, trying to save the coyotes and the deers and everything. But I really don't feel that wildlife is going to be affected anymore, whether we fill up that piece of property with townhomes or whether we fill it up with seven regular single-family homes. I'd like to say that the zone change and plan amendment that we're trying to get for a mixture of housing type and density, it's laid out in the City Kitchener Urban Design Manual 3.0 Community Design, paragraph 2, which I don't know how much water that holds, but seems like it's a good guideline to develop this property. A few other points I'd like to make is, we did at that last meeting at the yards, we got off on the wrong foot. People were under the impression that these were going to be starter units. We really wanted to have these things look really, really good. Myself, my son, and one of my colleagues, we drove through Hidden Valley over and over and over again. And we picked out the doors on this house, the roof line on that house, the landscaping on this house, to come up with what we thought was like the perfect buildings to put here that people could downsize. And, we do got a lot of feedback from people that said they would love to move into this. And I've also been told that, we're probably not asking enough money. This was just as recent as a couple days ago. We got on this, that we're talking $650,000. You're not asking enough money. That seems kind of weird, but I guess it's whatever the market will bear at the time, whether it be 700, 750 or whatever. And once again, we try to reflect the integrity of everything else, whether it be the entrances to the buildings, the lighting, the landscaping. I'm sure most of the residents are familiar with the address of 2296 Hidden Valley Crescent, which I think is one of the most beautiful homes in the area. We took a lot of real close look at that building to design this piece of property. It's beautiful stone. I just can't stress how much we put into this to make it really, really appealing to everybody.
Then your 5 minutes are up if you want to just close off.
Pardon me?
Your 5 minutes are up, so if you want to just close up your comments.
That was pretty well it anyway, but yep.
Good.
I'm
Thank
good.
you.
And one last thing, that petition that was signed, it was signed by 22 residents, people living in Hidden Valley area. And
there's some 100 residents in that area, you're saying? There's about 100 residents that live in that area, you said?
There was, my count, put it at 135 homes.
135.
135 homes.
And you have 25 that signed the petition in support.
Can't remember for 1 second. The next, 22.
22. Good. Thank you. So there are some questions by the committee. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs, for coming in.
Thank you.
Over here. Yep. No, I'm not waving you goodbye. I'm just saying you were looking for me, so I'm just helping you out. I really like the design of the homes. That they're very, and I think it's very thoughtful of you to try and incorporate the existing homes in the surrounding neighborhood. There's already been some talk. I think you've heard already some questions around whether or not you and your brother would consider decreasing the number of units that you're planning on that property in order to be more to get yourself closer to the lot sizes and the setbacks of the existing homes in the area.
Yeah, the setbacks on the one side, it's down a steep embankment to the city-owned property along the one side there. The other side is a vacant laneway that we abut onto, and the backside drops down off to the River Birch, I believe it is.
So I'm just asking, would you consider reducing the number of units from 40 to a smaller number?
I suppose we could look at whatever we had to look at, but what we did a cost on what it would take to bring sanitary, to dig up Hidden Valley Road to bring sanitary down, which means it's a large expense right there. And to do it for the original 7 homes that were planned there, the cost, I suppose we could pass it on to the home buyers or whatever, but the cost just justified itself a lot more when we hit that 40. We went from 42 down to 40. To make it right, to keep people happy, I'm sure we could do,
I was just curious. I don't want you to I'm not trying to box you into an answer that you're not, I don't want to put you on the spot too much. I just wanted to know to what degree you were open-minded, and I think you've answered the question that at least you'd be open to dialogue.
Well, like I say, living out in Hidden Valley for 22 years, I've seen people come and I've seen people go. I've seen them mostly come. There was nothing out there. There was a few people here that I know have been out there twice as long as me, and so.
Okay, thank you.
We're good?
So please, you're going to have to bear with us. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Just so I want to be clear, you presently own the house that is on the property that you are wishing to develop?
Between us and the bank, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we own it, but, we have a mortgage on it.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. But that's where you reside as well?
Oh, no, that's not where I reside.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm not allowed to ask you where you reside, so I'll just...
The delegation did disclose that he lives in the neighborhood. He lives in the neighborhood.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Now we're done?
No, there's one more question. 2 more people. Bear with... No, there's more people. I'm sorry. You still have to make your case. There's more questions by committee members. So I'll let you know when we're all done, so if you can bear with us. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and making your case. I just wanted to... The proposals you're putting forward, what are the size, what is the floor size of those? You're in an 8,000 square foot. What are you looking at?
Yeah, we weren't going to finish the basements on them, but we've had a request that why don't we build even smaller ones, for like Irene here that she's a woman that lives on the property right now. And she was asking for something even smaller than what we're proposing. And then we've had other people that said, well, they like a little bit more room. So, but we're trying to keep them at I think it's 18 to 2,400 square feet.
If you would you even consider 7 units on that area, like the previous builder that was going to build there?
Well, once again, it came down to bringing in the sanitary lines and tearing up Hidden Valley Road and stuff for it. It just didn't seem to justify itself as much as putting in some nicer townhomes. And honestly, the reason we did it was because my house was too big.
No, I was familiar with the original developer there, and yes, it was a matter of he didn't make any money with 7 units. So, no, that's all for now. Thank you.
All right.
There's questions by Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Mr. Sachs, for coming in. And I guess my question is going to relate to a deferral, if I put forth a deferral. Is there a time frame? Do you want this decision to be made as soon as possible, or do you want this decision to be pushed back? Because do you want an answer? Or?
This is our first attempt at developing something like this at all. We're a commercial contractor. We bought the property 2 years ago, thinking that, as naive as we are, thinking that we could start in the spring, or start in the fall, like start 6 or 7 months later. So 2 years has gone by, and it's, here we are today. So if this goes another half a year or a year or year and a half, 2 years, I don't know. But I mean, the value that we have in the property itself and the way real estate's going, I mean, are we losing? No, we're not losing money by holding on to it, but I would love to see it go, sooner than later.
Okay. I did have another question, but it sort of slipped my mind, but it wasn't that important. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you for speaking, Mr. Sachs. I appreciate it. One question, you don't have to answer, but I have to ask. If this is turned down as staff recommends, will you be appealing to the Ontario Municipal Board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No, that's all.
Good.
Appreciate that. Thanks for your patience as well. Can I have Alex Malcolm, please, come forward? Alex, as you may have already have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you very much. I shouldn't need all of that time. Thank you for your time so far this evening. I've been strongly encouraged by a current resident of Hidden Valley, to come and speak in favor of the development today. That is the one Karen Eiler. So when I say we, that's speaking to myself and Karen Eiler, a current resident of Hidden Valley. Karen's my cousin. I frequent Hidden Valley for holidays, birthdays, and you name it, right? Multiple times a year. So I'm more than familiar with the neighborhood. Karen lives in the older neighborhood on Hidden Valley Drive, which is independent of the city services, and it's on its privately owned services, sort of, the pioneers of Hidden Valley, if you will. We've seen some change growing up there and visiting there. We've seen everybody come in and develop the neighborhood. And it's a beautiful neighborhood, like everyone has said too. There's none other like it in the area, and I see only beneficial things resulting from this. Karen represents the over 50 demographic looking to downsize, something to sort of retire into. And personally, I represent the over 35 looking for something like a forever home, knowing that I probably can't afford something that currently exists in Hidden Valley. But like I said, I do love the neighborhood. It's something that I would show a lot of interest in. As mentioned, I don't see any negative impact on the existing community. It appears to be a self-contained little neighborhood on its own. And that said, people moving into that area know what to expect. I don't believe that you're going to be looking for anything over and above what's already available there. Walkable to the mall, and things of that nature too. So it was very important for Karen and myself that some positivity get represented from people that do live in the neighborhood currently.
Good, thank you. And there's one question.
Sure.
Questions? Councillor Gazzola?
You just raised, you mentioned walkable to the mall. What?
It seemed to be
you got to be under 35 for that.
Pardon me?
You have to be under 35 for that.
For that.
When you talk about the mall, what are you talking? I mean,
well,
this is the point
there seemed to be some emphasis, or at least a negative approach to the lack of available services in the area too. Fire is just down the street there on King, right? We've got good coverage there, and it sounds like we'll be on the city grid if and when the development does go ahead. So just trying to make sure that we address some of the more positive sides of the development.
There is that, but that is one of the positive things about that area. And when it was built, that there are no schools, there are no community centers, there really are no parkland, and the mall is quite a ways away. The closest thing to you is the city operating center. So, okay, thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Can I have Rich Weinstein, please?
Thank you. My name is Richard Weinstein. I live at 240 River Birch. I'll keep my comments even more brief. I'm here to support staff recommendations not to approve this. And my only comment would be that I've lived in Dune, I've been to Deer Ridge, it's not the same. This is a unique community within, not just Kitchener, it's a unique community in Ontario, and I've grown up in Toronto. The comments you've all made tonight, I think, are all on point. There's nothing else for me to add. My one question to council would be, are we going to seriously consider deferring this because of a petition that 100 people signed who don't live in the community? And why is that?
If you please make your delegation, and if there are questions, then you can.
So I apologize. So that would be my. Can I ask a question to council then?
Well, if council member or committee members want to ring in and ask questions of you, then you can have that conversation. But if you want to make it your presentation,
then my comments are concluded. Okay. Thank you.
And I see no questions or I do one. So you might have an opportunity to get that answered. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you for coming in. And to answer your question is, anytime when we have an issue such as this and you hear opposing views, all I've heard is one opposing view, but this other view just came in earlier this morning, and I like to see the whole aspect of the whole issue before I make a full holistic decision. But more importantly, I've heard from a lot of folks that are saying, and I had received several calls from residents within your community asking me they would like to see a development where they can downsize. So in that area. So that's where I want to look at. And if the current owner is willing to look at another option or another model, I want to give that person, that owner, the opportunity.
So my comment on that then.
Go ahead.
So does it not bother you that there are almost 100 people who signed a petition who don't live in the community?
And that's your comment. I appreciate that. You've said your piece. And that's part of the information that we'll have to collectively have to assess. Thank you. Can I have Mira come forward, please? Mira Desia? Okay. So that person's not here. So those were all the registered delegations. We can, if I can have it's been moved by Councillor Gazzola. I'll allow opportunity to ask some further questions of staff after the information received by the delegations. If there are any, Councillor Ioannidis.
We're going to get some more further questions to staff?
If you want, because there has been a lot of information expressed after that, so I want to make sure you have opportunity to clarify. Go ahead. Well, you ringed in, yeah? Go ahead.
I guess my question to staff is, when I look at this, I'm having a little bit of a difficulty trying to understand the rationale of staff and with the concerning about lots. When I look at other areas in the city that are somewhat similar, and then we approve them, and I can think of one in particular on Ottawa Street where we had Activa's lands, and that was 240 something units, and then this one here is only 40. I'm trying to understand the rationale here because I'm a little confused on it.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Through you, Mr. Chair. We've talked a lot tonight about concerns of compatibility and density and whatnot. The main concern that staff has with this is that within the city of Kitchener proper, there are only 126 lots that are zoned for R1. This site represents only an entire 5% of all the land zoned R1 for estate lots in the entire city. There are many areas of the city, there are tens of thousands of lots that have zoning that is that would permit the type of development that the applicant is requesting. In this particular case, we feel that protecting that 5% of all land zoned for estate lot is is of primary importance, and that's the main reason for this.
Okay, and I can understand that rationale, but I'm looking at this as the current owner, and then as the previous owner couldn't make the 8 units work because of the sewers. So I'm a little confused. There seems like a disconnect here. So I mean, if we're kind of saying we can build 8 units, but realistically you can't. So
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that is correct. That's my understanding of why the last proposal did not go through. I strongly suspect that the land values will increase, especially as really there's going to be more people living in Kitchener. There's going to be less opportunity to purchase these lots, and I suspect that the land values will increase to make that sewer line financially viable in the future.
okay. Thanks, Andrew.
Councilor Fernandez.
Thanks. I wanted to. I meant to ask when the delegation was up. Rich, right? How many people are here in support of the staff recommendation? If you can just raise your hand. Okay, so at least over half. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that information. Because I missed the staff presentation, I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Pinnell, that I understand that it's because of what you just stated regarding the land, the percentage of land that's left for estate lots. But are there other considerations that I may have missed when I had stepped out that you can maybe quickly summarize? I apologize for making everybody go through that again, but I mean, I've read the reports and I know that there are numerous other issues related to that, but is there another important point I need to know about?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. If there is anywhere in the city to retain estate lot residential, it would be an area that is totally isolated from everything, and Hidden Valley is that place. It has no transit service. It is separated from commercial development. It is separated from community centers. It is separated from other types of development by these numerous barriers, including the Grand River to the south and east, heavy industrial lands to the west, an ESPA, Highway 8, major arterial road to the north. And so if there was one place to retain a contiguous area of estate lot potential, this would be it. As well, the community plan, the Hidden Valley Residential Community Plan that was put into effect many years ago, and as Ms. Wiebe reiterated, this was revised in 2005, and those policies carried over to the current and new official plan. Those policies state a maximum density of 4 units per hectare and restrict land uses to only single detached and duplex dwellings. And we feel as staff that those policies should not be overlooked. And we did have some, although of a lesser importance, some concerns with urban design, especially as the townhouses would relate to Hidden Valley Road, as well as how the units to the rear would interact with the single detached houses that face onto River Birch Street to the south.
Okay, thank you very much. Was there any concern related to, because now Ms. Wiebe identified that there will be some significant cut and fill and grading on that property, so which wasn't something that was happening in the Hidden Valley development, because that stayed within the topography of the land for the most part. Was there any concern from staff about the impacts of the additional impervious cover and the runoff for the water quality, quantity, and how that's going to affect the ecological area of Hidden Valley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be through a future site plan process that we would look at those in detail. Our environmental planning staff, engineering staff, and the region, who all have interests in those matters, did comment on this official plan amendment and zone change and did not have any significant concerns. It looked like that the grading would not be a significant concern or factor. But again, we would look at those in much more detail through a future site plan process.
Right, and the property owners already identified the fact that they would have to bring services from Hidden Valley Road, which could cause a significant amount of disturbance to the area as well, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, bringing the services to the site would entail mainly digging up the road. So there would be interruptions for traffic purposes, but I don't know that there would be significant impacts off of the site. There would be definitely impacts on the site besides the road changes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just one question. Again, planning isn't my background, but I'm curious what the value is in retaining these 2/3 of an acre estate-sized lots. Like, how does that? Where does the value play come into this versus a third of an acre or a smaller lot?
I would suggest, through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that the amount of land available here for large lot estate residential land in Kitchener is extremely limited. As I mentioned previously, there are 126 lots, and that includes draft approved lots, even lots that are not yet formed, that are available for that type of development. This is what we feel to be strongly a major important factor because as our economic development division commented, in order to attract and maintain talent within the city, as an example, we need to have a large variety of lots, and estate lots will cease to become available in the future. The city staff does not expect that there will be any new lots of this nature created. So we feel it's of prime importance to retain as much land as possible for this use.
Okay, so just so I understand this, the idea is, in terms of talent attraction, these large lots in a private area, these are the people that, the CEOs of companies and that sort of thing that we would be otherwise afraid to lose from an economic development perspective? That's what I'm understanding.
I would suggest we don't like to discuss the types of users of buildings, but in my personal experience in dealing with the members of Hidden Valley, that this particular neighborhood seems to have many more such people in professional roles such as the ones you mentioned. And it's important that there be homes available for all different income levels. This is a higher income level, no doubt, and we feel that it's important to maintain a minimum level of this type of lot for higher income earners.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Janeski.
Are we into comments, or are we still to the questions?
Questions.
Sorry?
Questions.
Well, I'm reserved my comments then.
Good, that's fine. If you can key back in. Thank you. So there's no other questions. I have some of my own. Andrew, I realize that you've through earlier questions expressed why there's a need to preserve large estate lots. Yet it's giving me an uncomfortable feeling because we're trying to, have an air of exclusivity in this neighborhood, where only the 1% possibly, or less than 1% can own something that exists in this neighborhood, where the average rest of us, the 99.99 maybe even, would not be able to afford a property in that neighborhood. Why is that part of our planning principle?
I'd say through you, Mr. Chair, there are no other areas in the city that permit this type of use. If there were other areas that were designated or zoned to allow this type, if there were many more potential lots available, perhaps this piece of land wouldn't be as important as it is.
Do we have neighborhoods in the Westmount neighborhood where there are large lots? They may not be acre lots, but they are large lots that cater to a higher income bracket? Old Westmount?
There are lots that are larger than the average size lot in Westmount, but there are no other areas in Kitchener that would accommodate lots of this size.
Are there not lots and properties in the Deer Ridge area, which is an extensive subdivision, where there are larger lots and cater to larger, more square footage homes than an average home that you would find in the city of Kitchener?
I conducted a study of the different areas that have R1 zoning. There are three. There are Hidden Valley. There's a small pocket at the corner of Bleems and Hidden Valley, of Bleems and Huron Road, and there is an area down near New Dundee Road that would allow lots of this particular size. The areas that you mentioned, Deer Ridge, does not have zoning that permits lots of this particular caliber.
Okay. So I would have some other questions regarding amenity space. I just did a quick Google search, and from 1054 Hidden Valley to the nearest community center, which would be Centerville, Chicopee, and Google is saying that if I drive there, it would be 4 minutes. If I walk there, it would be 27 minutes. If I bike there, it would take me 8 minutes. There are parts of area in my ward even where that would probably be similar distance, and that's not considered a outlying neighborhood. That would be even closer to the inner core. So amenities are close enough to this neighborhood then, within reach.
There is a community center off of I think it's Morgan.
Yes.
Where the community center is. In my presentation, I didn't mention community center. I think that came out later. Transit is the main. Transit, schools, proximity and accessibility to commercial lands, and parks are probably the main services that I'm speaking about.
Okay.
Community services, or community centers rather, perhaps are a little bit closer, but there is also numerous barriers to getting to that actual community center. Google Maps will show you, based on an algorithm, how long it'll take you to get there, but it doesn't factor in that you've got to cross major barriers to get there.
Right, well, it takes into account the trails, but that's fine. My last question is more to the servicing. Right now, it's not a service lot. So just clarity from an earlier question. Currently, if there wasn't a proposal for 8 units, so that's not enough of a density for us to provide servicing. Is that my understanding, or servicing could be provided for 8 units?
Servicing could be provided for the 8-unit proposal that was previously proposed, or for 40 units. I think the question at this point in time, from what I understand from the development industry, is the financial feasibility.
Oh, I see. So it
not
would be
the actual function, practical, physical capability to construct the pipes.
And you were saying that over time, the cost for this lot, or the average cost for a home, would even rise even more, which the feasibility would make more sense at that point.
That's my expectation.
So the properties in this area would be even more further outreach of an average person. That's fine.
Correct.
More of a statement than a question, really. So those were all the questions of the committee. I will... Oh, well, you know what? There is actually a suggestion for a deferral. And deferral does take precedence. And I'll come to Councillor Ioannidis, to you first, to see what you have in mind. And then we can go from there. So I want to settle that matter.
Okay, as far as a deferral, I'm looking at a council meeting August 29th.
August 29th. And the purpose of the deferral is?
The purpose of the deferral is, given that the previous owner, the owner had come in and I don't think he gave a consideration to lower density. And I think from just to get a better holistic approach, I think if they can maybe come in with reevaluate their plans, that this would give them some time to reevaluate whether or not it's a feasible project for them or not, or whether, and in addition, my concern is this will be going to the OMB. So I want to give this property owner the ability to have that full comprehensive review.
All right, well, we do have a deferral motion before us. There are a number of, we have Councillor Janetsky, Davey, and Gazzola for comments. We can only focus on the deferral at hand, and the comments can be related only as to the timing. So if you want to make comments on the deferral, please go do so. Councillor Janetsky.
Yes, I have a lot of comments, but since we're only going to be dealing with the deferral, I will definitely not be supporting it. It is ludicrous to go for a deferral. Staff's recommendation is clear. I have reviewed this report thoroughly. I've listened to the delegations and making their presentations. The matters have been set out. There's no room in terms of wiggle for this. It's clear it's either black or white in terms of the type of official plan amendment and zone change that's proposed here. There's just no need for the deferral at all, and staff, as I pointed out, staff is clear, and I will definitely be not supporting it.
There's no applause from the. There's no applause or comments from the gallery, please, if you can refrain from doing so. Councillor Davey, go ahead.
So I have a question of process. So if the deferral passes, this doesn't come back to us until the time of the deferral, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to hold off for a second, I think.
Councillor Gazzola?
I think Councillor Janetsky has said it clearly. There's no need for deferral here. Deferring isn't going to change. There are some pretty basic reasons, some pretty basic answers here. Deferring isn't going to help anything. The date of the deferral, August, is not a good time to have something come back. That's summertime. People in the summertime aren't sitting around waiting for council meetings. So if there's, and I'm afraid where this is going to go, because I know how this council thinks, so I know exactly how the vote is going to go. So the only thing I can argue about is the date, and I guess you have to ask the developer. That's the person that has tied up their funds into this thing. I'm sure the neighborhood, you can defer it for 50 years as far as they're concerned. So, August is not an appropriate date if we're really interested in serving the public.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, and just a quick comment. I used to walk in this area. It is a unique area. I was always impressed with the experience of viewing wildlife. So that was the way I was originally approaching this. It's an exclusive, beautiful area, and I don't want to do anything to damage that. However, as I listen to the arguments tonight, this townhouse development, it certainly ain't affordable housing, and it's not stacked townhouses.
It's for the timing.
I'm getting to it, and I have the floor.
No, but Councillor Etherington, if you can focus your comments to the timing rather than the comments of the development at hand.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. For that reason, I'm sort of really torn on this. I'm sympathetic to the development, and I do not currently agree with the staff recommendations.
Timing.
That sympathy would obviously increase in the event the developer reduced zoning, and so I don't see anything wrong with this deferral. It's a short deferral, and I think we might achieve some resolution during that time frame.
Thank you. To the timing, Councillor Gallo-Wheelock.
Timing is what it is. I just quickly wanted to say that I'm not supportive of the deferral. I think there's two completely different philosophies that we're looking at. We're looking at staff who are saying that the max they could do is 8, and the developer is saying there's no way in heck that that's going to happen. And so I don't see while they may go from 40 to 25, it's still not going to be supportive by staff. And so I don't see, in some circumstances I've seen, where there might be that movement, this one's way too far apart and the philosophies are way too different. Therefore, I cannot support a deferral. And I think, Councillor Gazzola, may prove you wrong on some of your thinking around this horseshoe.
And those were all the comments by the committee. I'll take a moment to make my own. I certainly don't see anything wrong with allowing conversation to be had with the developer and our staff, and allow the neighborhood to be able to have some additional perspective on this. It never hurts for us to be able to proactively and in a cooperative way work together to find the right mix. I think that a lot of good questions were asked. I'm seeing a lot of people ring in. Do we have more questions, or? I'm talking about the deferral, Councillor Gazzola. I'm getting myself to it, please, Councillor Gazzola. I gave you an opportunity to speak. I gave you a lot of leeway to speak, and I'm only affording a limited amount to myself. That's it. And yes, I'm containing myself to those rules that I've set. So I'm supportive of the timing, because I think it does give ample opportunity for the neighborhood, staff, and the applicant to be able to come to some sort of compromise or bring forward something that could be a better fit and suit this neighborhood. Based on that, for the deferral, I will take a vote. Recorded vote has been called. And next time, please, if someone has a question off the floor, a point of order would be more respectful to say rather than just yelling out. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's defeated. So now I will take comments for the staff recommendation. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, thank you. So staff very rarely turn down an application. So often we will sit here and we'll actually try to get them to turn something down. So when they do, I really believe that they have got some really strong rationale. Unlike the previous application that I worked with the residents, we were not that far apart. We had some concerns. The residents had concerns. We worked together with them, and we came up with a compromise. Now, to be quite honest with you, when I walked out those doors, they were not 100% happy. But we still have a few more steps to go, and we have, a council meeting on the 27th. If they wish to come and bring something forward to me, I will voice those concerns. But you know what? We have so many areas in the city where we can do townhouses and density, like what the developer is proposing. He admits to living in the area for 22 years and knows the area well, and is aware of what was in the area. He took the chance when he bought the lot that he could build what he wanted. Now he's saying that he's going to take the city to the OMB because he didn't get what he wants in the area that he was fully aware of. The residents that are sitting here today bought into that area because they knew what they wanted. They live there, they recognize that it's, much to my dismay, it's a car-driven development. But that's what you wanted, and that's what you got. To switch things up at this point in time, and I think Ms. Wiebe made a very good point when she talked about the community plan, and the number of times that community plan has been reviewed, and it has remained that kind of community plan. And we need to continue to respect that. Sure, it sounds like a little bit of elitist, but we do recognize that there are people in this community who can afford estate lots in Hidden Valley. and the people who can live in a variety of other housing, whether it's townhouses or condos or apartments or single family or semis. And those are built and developed in areas which suit those people. So, let's recognize that this is a very unique area. It needs to be protected, and certainly I would strongly encourage the residents who live there to continue to support the protection of Hidden Valley as an ecological site, not just only as where you reside. So I fully support staff's recommendation. I think they've worked hard. They've given us some very good, strong rationale for why they are refusing this application.
Thank you. Councillor Janeski?
Yes, thank you. I drove the area just last week to get another appreciation of the beauty of the community of Hidden Valley. I've driven it many times over the years, and I haven't been out there recently, but I drove down through the community, every street, just to get an appreciation of the housing. And it was what I basically thought has happened, has grown up and developed in the way it should be. The staff recommendation of approval of recommending that the application be turned down is an excellent recommendation, and the rationale that they use for it to be turned down and refused is brilliant, exactly brilliant. I was very impressed with where they are coming from. Having worked in the planning field for many years, this is a very unique development and area of the city. As pointed out, there's some 130 lots throughout the community zoned R1, of which the majority are in this area. And of that 130, we have 65,000 properties throughout the city, and we're only talking 130 here. And almost all of them are developed, except for just a handful. So to remove the zoning of R1 from these lands and convert it to R6 is going the wrong way. We are very limited. There'll be no other area in the city of Kitchener that can develop in an R1 scenario. And this is the area that has to be maintained. Somebody pointed out saying that the Westmount area has R1. Well, that's my ward and that's my area. There is no R1. There is not one R1 zone in that area, nor there will it be, because all the lots have been developed with R2s and R3s. So that makes this area all the more unique. Mr. Pinnell's explanation to the questions that have been raised have been excellently answered. I'm very impressed. This area, basically the homes, the design that the developer has for the townhousing looks wonderful. It would fit into Deer Ridge, it would fit into Westmount, it would fit into a few other areas. And of course it could also fit into here, but it's townhousing. It's 40 units, not just a handful of single-family, large lot R1 zonings. And it's pointed out by Ms. Carol Wiebe about the maximum density of 4 units to the hectare. That was established back over 30 years ago, and it's still reinforced now with the recent official plan. That's got to be maintained, and that's the uniqueness of this particular area for this development. Then we have some petitions that have been emailed to us, a handful here from a few, not even dated from one person, no date, no name from another, and another person, no address, and is dated January 2015. This is before even the application was circulated. So this is like a half a year before. And there's another one. To me, these are useless petitions. And then there's the other one that Councillor Gazzola pointed out. That's a list of some 130 names. We went through them, looked at each one. Of course, a lot of them are in the Hidden Valley area, and a bunch of them are from Kitchener. But there's a whole bunch from Waterloo, Plattsburgh, Toronto, New Dundee. I mean, these people don't even know where Hidden Valley is. Sure, it'd be nice to maybe have it, but to me, the petitions are important, but this one has no relevance, in my opinion. Basically, I will definitely not support this not support the development, but I am supporting staff's recommendation of refusal and not supporting the particular development of the zone change and the official plan.
Councillor Janeski, I didn't interrupt you because I wanted to just allow you to say your comments, but just want to make a note that we don't want to be disrespectful of members of our community or any community that are taking part in democracy. Just because they don't agree with us, we can't be seen as being disrespectful to what their comments may be. So please, and this is a comment to other members that. Okay, thank you. Maybe that last point made what I'm trying to refer to. Councillor Gazzola.
Am I the last? Do I get to go last?
No, because you moved it.
I'll go ahead now.
If you want to come back, I allow you.
No, let's not waste any time. Let me start off by apologizing to the chair. I did not mean any disrespect. And I also have to say that not often am I right, and this time I'm wrong on the way the vote came out. But I thank council for that, because I think we need to move ahead. I will support the recommendation that's coming forth from staff. And I want to really point out that this is the same type of recommendation that we periodically get from planning staff. Now, one other example of this wasn't to do with executive estate lands, it's industrial land. And there's a real limited amount of industrial land. And whenever that comes on the table, the first thing staff will do is pound the table and say, we don't have industrial land, and so we have to protect the little that we've got. We've had people that want to come in and put churches on industrial land, all these great, good things, but staff have been held firm to the fact that no, we don't have any other industrial land, we need to protect it. Well, this is the same argument for this estate type of lots. And the thing is, right now, it's not feasible, economically feasible, to go with the 7 homes in this type of an area. But as time moves on and values go up, it will be feasible. And someday some developer will walk in there and make their good profit. But in the meantime, we need to keep it the way it is. It's important, and it's been pointed out about what our official plan says. Those are our rules, that we look to everything else, to our plans on all of the other issues, and we say, well, it's in the plan, and let's go forward. We're going to spend this, we're going to do that, it's in the plan, let's go. Well, this is something that's been in the official plan. The official plan's been revised recently, and it is still there. And so it needs to be there. It needs to protect this area forever. I just came back from visiting Paris, and they have rules there that you can't build dwellings in the downtown of Paris higher than 6 stories, I think. And even if Donald Trump comes, he cannot build in Paris unless he stays within the 6-story rule. So this is a good rule. I mean, look, and we started to bring in the exclusive card and all that. Look, there are people that have higher incomes. There always will be people that, and should we can envy them, but do we not realize that, that's their way of life, and so should we not go along with that? They have the right to have that type of living, and they pay well for it. Nobody's ever brought it up here from the people that live in that area, but man, I know what the property taxes are out there. They pay well for it. The other argument I want to talk about is this whole question of neighborhood. Neighborhood, we don't send out an email out of this city without reminding everybody about the importance of neighborhood. We had our big neighborhood weekend just this past weekend. Well, here is a neighborhood that says We like what we have, we want to keep what we have, and that's what the neighborhood wants. So I think we need to listen to the neighborhood. In conclusion, we have to support staff. If we don't support staff, if we turn over what staff is recommending and it goes to the OMB, well, we're at the OMB without any staff or without any legal staff, what have you, and they're at a high expense to the rest of the community. So I would urge you to, in the final analysis, I think what we have here is good for our community, and it doesn't exclude mixed housing. There are a lot of other areas in the city, and as has been pointed out, the provincial legislation does not say that there has to be intensification in every area of the city. We have a unique area. Let's recognize it. Let's enjoy it.
Thank you.
Please support it.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I will be supporting staff's recommendation. I struggle with these sometimes because, yes, I think it's the right decision, but in some sense, because the OMB and really we don't know what's going to happen when it goes to the Ontario Municipal Board. In some ways, I feel like we're passing the buck a little bit. So that was why I supported the deferral, because I think what the residents, the first thing they want is they want to maintain the existing zoning, but the second thing they want is to have the minimum number of dwellings happening. And I think that we didn't explore every avenue when it came to that. So what's going to happen at the OMB? I don't know. So sometimes I think we have to make sure that we try and work a little bit harder with the developer in these situations, because there is a high level of uncertainty at the Ontario Municipal Board. Having said that, I will support staff's recommendation, and I think they did good work in this file.
Thank you. Councillor Galway-Seelock? Go ahead.
I just first want to thank all the residents for coming out. Those are for and against. I've been watching your faces. It's riveting information that we get to talk about on Monday nights. So I do thank you for coming out and participating and being here and showing whether it's your support for or against. It's really appreciated to see your faces and know that you're engaged in your community. So thank you for that. I think that this area has had strong planning principles that have been entrenched in our policies over a long period of time, and that with this one, our philosophies are just way too far apart for there to be any compromise. Currently, staff's position would be only to have 4 units on this lot, but they may be able to compromise to 8. Well, between 40 and 8, there's not a lot of room that's going to happen, and we've already heard from a financial perspective, 8's just not going to cut it from a financial perspective. So I think we need to rely at this point on policies that have been in place for a long period of time and keep the character of the neighborhood. I will support the staff recommendation, and I do want to note that there's many neighborhoods in the area that I represent that end up picking up the extra density. There's no doubt about that. A lot of the neighborhoods exceed the targets that are required, so we're probably picking up the density that you're not, and hopefully this council will see that the amenities that need to go with picking up that extra density can come in the near future. So I do once again appreciate staff's time and all the residents' energy that's gone into bringing this forward today.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Singh. I feel that housing diversity must be maintained. We need neighborhoods of all kinds, from low units per hectare to higher units per hectare. Our official plan is our guide to achieve and respect density levels. We've increased density in areas where our official plan allowed it, but we must follow the plan and not allow it here. The reasoning behind the recommendation is sound and reasoned, and I will support it.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, thank you, Chair Singh. I will reluctantly support the recommendation, and the reasoning why I'll reluctantly support that is because I don't want to see our municipality go any other undue costs by not supporting this. But I can't say I'm not disappointed in the decision that there was no deferral. one of the things that we constantly hear around this horseshoe is to have the fullness of discussion, and even if there are opposing views, to vet those through. And really, I think we failed that time, and I think we were rushed to judge this too soon.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Singh. This one is a bit of a struggle for me because I do hear all of the very good arguments for going with staff's recommendation, and of course staff's hard work on this work has been extraordinary, but I also feel for the landowner, and I want to I'm happy that we will have 2 weeks between now and council to be able to, I'd like to sit with this a little longer and be able to have a few more conversations about it. For now, I will also reluctantly support staff's recommendation, and in the meantime, have some more conversations. Thank you.
Mayor Bavenovic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone who's been here this evening on this particular application as well, and sharing your thoughts with us, whether in writing or in person. And, as I reflect on this application, it is a bit of a difficult one in many ways. I mean, there is part of me that philosophically believes that a certain degree of intensification is important. It's the right thing to do for our community from a sustainability point of view. And I think providing options to people, particularly if they can transition in a neighborhood that they're comfortable in, that's a good thing. I mean, in many ways, if folks can age and stay in a neighborhood that they value, it's a great way to age. However, I also listen to the arguments and the planning arguments that have been presented by staff, and consider the uniqueness of this particular neighborhood that's been articulated. And it's difficult to not hear to consider those facts from staff, consider the input of everybody on both sides. And while part of me does support intensification, not acknowledge the uniqueness of this neighborhood. And I think that, coupled with the fact that to go against this would mean really going against our governing planning documents and put us in a situation where we would be essentially having to argue against our own professional planning staff's expertise in terms of this application, assuming it goes to the OMB, does not make a lot of sense to me. And so on the balance of considering everything, I too will be supporting the recommendation that's before us this evening.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, just a quick comment through you, Mr. Chair. As I said earlier, I was attempting to say I'm really torn on this one. I love that area, always have, and I can understand the residents' desire to keep it exactly the way it is. However, I'm like Councillor Marsh. I wanted more time to consider this, and I think it's being rammed through now, so I'm not comfortable with that. I am comfortable with the work that staff has done, and I'm always impressed with the way planning staff approach these issues. It was a real surprise to see their opinion on this one, but I'd be willing to back staff, which is not to say I'll stay this way until when it reappears at council. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's all the comments by the committee members, and I'll try to make mine as well. Leading up to this, I struggled with this one, and I have to be honest, I continue to struggle with it because I think we should never be seen as supporting exclusivity, but in this case, I think we somewhat are. We may try to dance around that question, and I'll explain myself. The thing is, it's very difficult for anyone to be able to buy into this neighborhood under the $1 million price tag, and even $1 million maybe coming a far reach on that one as well. Simply because the size of the lots as they are, and I think through the discussion and the comments and the questions answered, it's very clear the land values will only continue to go up. No one from the goodness of their heart will build a property that's within affordable range on an acre lot that they may themselves have bought a lot for itself to $500,000 to $1 million price tag. So which means that there is a segment of our population, a very large majority, vast majority of the segment of our population that will not be able to enjoy the features, the very distinct, the very beautiful features of this neighborhood. And that doesn't necessarily settle well with me. And that's why I think there does need to be some effort made, maybe not all of it. There has to be a compromise. There has to be a balance, I think, that small portions of a neighborhood like this that does have estate lots, does have some diversity stock. To what component? That may not mean that every lot that's remaining there could be redeveloped for increased density, but that could be that right type of lots that adhere to the right principles, and because of the positioning in that neighborhood could be allowed to develop more, that's more affordable range for other segments of our population to be able to buy into this neighborhood. So based on that, but with reluctance, I will support it, but hoping that our planning staff will take some notice out of the comments, varied comments that were given by committee members, and try to take that into account in future applications as well, especially because we are currently reviewing our infill guideline. We have to get it right. We can't be opposed to infill or put too much restrictions in one part and then be looking at neighborhoods like this and say, no, we have to adhere and try to maintain the essence of large lots. You have to get those balances correct, and that puts pressure on our staff to do so, and I think more work will have to be done on our infill guideline to get that component right as we try to do so for this neighborhood as well. So with that, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Sure. Recorded vote has been called. All those in favor? That's unanimous. So again, to the delegations and those that were here in the gallery, this has been approved by committee. It will have to be ratified by council. I think with the overwhelming support, I'm sure most of you can take solace that the will seems to be in support of the staff recommendation, but it will be ratified by council 2 weeks from now. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.